Hello again, everyone. Her real name was Lyova Haskell Rosenthal, and she was born on October 31st, 1925, in Manhattan. Her parents were Russian Jews who came to the United States after leaving Odessa to avoid being violently abused. She and her sister, Widia, had run away, leaving behind family members who probably never made it out alive. They moved into a small room at 148th Street and Riverside in New York City, although they didn't have any money. Abraham, her father, worked nonstop as a teacher and real estate agent. When the economy was bad, they were trying to keep their family alive. Even Abraham's Polish Orthodox folks didn't want him to marry Widia because things were so tense. This made things even worse. It was never clear how old Lee was. His age was given as 1925 or 1931, which was usual for immigrant families who didn't have official records. But her skill showed early on no matter what year it was. In 1931, she was only 4 years old when she sang on the Metropolitan Opera, which is one of the biggest stages in the world. She played the princess who was taken hostage in Laura Colo. She was playing with famous singers when most kids her age were still learning how to talk in full sentences. As a result of that show, she got a scholarship to the local playhouse, which changed her life forever. In spite of the cheers, her house was full of stress. Wuthering had given up everything for Lee and enrolled her in acting, ballet, and opera lessons all at the same time. Lee was not playing like the other kids. She was always putting on a show. Each year that went by, her mother's standards got higher. Widia was so desperate for attention that one day, she made her daughter act at school in blackface. When Lee was about 10, her mother's mental health totally broke down. Lee found her and called for help after she made a scary suicide attempt. That feeling never left her. Lee hit another high point when he was 11. She joined the American Ballet Theater and was one of the youngest dancers they would agree to take. Unfortunately, it didn't last. It got too fast for her body to handle. Her height increased overnight. In dance, losing a few inches in a few months can mean the end of a career. Her height made it impossible for her to dance with men, and all the things she had trained for started to fall apart. Their whole family was counting on her to become a ballet dancer. Whatever they did, that door was shut. They had no cash on hand. Lee worked out on the fire escape because their Bronx apartment was so small. It was hard for her dad to work so much. However, it wasn't sufficient. They got by with help from the New Deal. Lee's stomach got hungry sometimes. She made money by acting, singing, and dancing while her friends went to school by the time she was 12. The money she made covered her rent, food, and expenses. Unfortunately, she did not have a normal childhood, and this hurt her deeply and will affect her forever. After turning 17, she changed her name to Lee Grant, so she could leave her past behind and become a part of Broadway's world. She got her first real part in the 1948 movie Joy to the World. The critics were surprised that she hadn't done any official stage work before, but she knew how to handle stress. As early as age 4, she had already played at the Met Opera. By age 16, she had trained under Sandy Meisner at the neighborhood playhouse. Ballet, music, art classes, and even Juilliard after high school were all required by her mother. It was 1949, and she tried out for Detective Story. Although she was only 22, she didn't want to play a young girl. What she really wanted was to read for the 40-year-old shoplifter. Girls' voices she heard on New York City buses inspired her to write the character. She was dressed in a brown sweater from another show that was size 18. It was a brave move that earned her the Critics' Circle Award and altered her trajectory. At the Actors Studio, she trained with Lee Strasberg and learned method acting based on what Stanislavski had taught her. On film, she played the same part in Detective Story with Kirk Douglas in 1951. She was 25 when she was nominated for her first Oscar. Her marriage to author Arnold Minoff happened that same year, 1951. The Communist Party was important to him, something she never really got or agreed with. He put on a play where they met, but when Lee spoke at Actor J, everything changed at Edward Bromberg's funeral, where the government was blamed for his death. Someone gave her a paper 2 days later. The paper had her name on it. People in red channels called her a commie sympathizer. She got put on a blacklist. At age 24, she was no longer working in Hollywood. She was banned from TV and movies for the next 12 years, from 1952 to 1964. In front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, she refused to name names, which cost her everything. She was famous in early TV shows even before she was put on the blacklist. The role of Rose Peabody in Search for Tomorrow was played by her in 1953. At the end of each show, she might have poisoned the soup, which built suspense. Someone in Syracuse sent a postcard to CBS calling her a commie, which ended Don Knotts' role as her mute brother. Instantly, she was fired. The advertisers didn't want any trouble. In 1950, her first movie took her to Hollywood, where she saw a darker side of the business. It was clear to her that sexism was a big problem in the studio structure. Producers made suggestions that were not suitable. 20% of actors were women in 1930, down from 40% in 1920. The five biggest studios, Warner Brothers, Paramount, MGM, Fox, and RKO, had most of the power. Lee was not going to give up, no matter what. Detective Story won her Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival in 1952. However, the blacklist hid that award. She still had a bad name. She was unable to do her job. She was speaking up, but couldn't. She was unable to act or move. That time, she worked wherever she could. Small stage shows with fake names. She kept up her efforts. But critics still saw her fire. In her early years on Broadway, she often improvised in a way that showed how she felt. At age 17, she shocked everyone with an acting class that brought out a wild side of her. She remembered that spark, that moment. She didn't settle for routine parts. That's what she always did. She chose the tough, painful ones. She had more problems when she went back to shows like The Goldbergs in the 1950s. She was in the same roles as men, but she made a lot less money. The pay gap really existed. During the Red Scare, networks stopped putting on shows with players of color or Jews because they were too dangerous. Not wanting to risk anything, they ended those shows. She started performing with Stalag 17 on Broadway in 1953. People learned about that play not only for the story, but also for what went on behind the scenes. The director, Jose Ferrer, was quite strict. He had a fight with players. Lee pushed back because she knew how to act in a proper way and had her own ideas. People on Broadway talked about their fights, but they also showed something more important. There was no way Lee Grant was going to give up. The mess started when Lee Grant was only 23 years old. It was April 1951, and her Best Actress performance in Detective Story with Kirk Douglas had just won her her first Oscar nomination. Everyone in Hollywood believed she would become a big star soon. But her name was on a government list of people thought to be communists before she could even go to the event. She did it because of her husband, Arnold Manoff. For the House Un-American Activities Committee, Edward Demetric said that Manoff had been a member of the Communist Party. Lee wouldn't speak out against him. Her lack of knowledge about his political views had always caused issues in their relationship, but she didn't think it mattered. Now her name was in a book called Red Channels, with 150 other people's. Right as her career was taking off, she was put on a blacklist and couldn't be in movies or on TV. It all went down quickly. The part she was offered was in a streetcar called Desire, 10 years' most important plays. But overnight, the directors took her off the show. She only had seconds to fight or say goodbye. Her company contracts were suddenly canceled with no notice. It seemed like she was the next big thing one day, and then no one could touch her the next. Nobody called anymore. Projects stopped happening. Kirk Douglas afterward said that she had a very bright future in Hollywood that was taken away from her. Within a few days, she was gone. The FBI began to watch her. They called her and listened in. Others were sent to follow her and listen in on her talks. Although she was with her daughter Dinah, she always felt like someone was listening. Things started to go badly in her marriage. It felt dangerous everywhere because of the pressure from the cameras. Nobody she trusted. She said that trying to live while being watched all the time felt like dancing on the head of a pin. It was always scary and tense. Worse things happened in 1953. Arnold and she were both taken off all blacklists. They weren't making money. It was necessary for Manoff to write under a fake name, Joel Carpenter. Plus, he didn't make much even back then. He wrote for several TV shows, including You Are There, Naked City, and The Defenders. Dinah needed food, so Lee sold her trinkets. They shared a small building with other families on the lists and tried to help each other. For money, Lee did small acting jobs under fake names and taught acting. She made enough to live on, but not nearly as much as she used to make from movies. She had lost all of her beauty. She called those years her ingenue years, which were supposed to be the time when she became a star. They lived in poverty. It was stressful for her. She started having trouble remembering things after her interview with the House Un-American Activities Committee. Close friends' names escaped her. It was always damaged. Even after many years, she was still having trouble with it. Over time, she said that writing her autobiography, I Said Yes to Everything, made her face the pain. She understood that the ban wasn't the only thing that had broken her. It hurt their minds, the fear, the quiet, and the shame. Her brain was wired differently after that. In order to make money, she turned her Manhattan apartment into a small acting school. She taught between 15 and 20 people a week from 1951 to 1963. She charged $25 each time. Sandy Dennis, who went on to win an Oscar, was her first student. Lee taught her students everything she knew about casting chairs, dishonest bosses, and how the blacklist hurt people. Her honesty became famous in the class. Just enough to take care of Dinah. Her monthly income was $300 to $400. Luckily, it kept them living. She was finally asked to join HB Studio, where famous people like Maureen Stapleton learned. As of 1960, her marriage to Arnold Manoff was over. Their relationship lasted 9 years. He had Tommy, Michael, and Eva, his children from another marriage. Lee joined the Communist Party because of him. She thought she was supporting her husband by doing this. She learned that he was having affairs, even though they were having a hard time. She was getting only $1,200 a year as a teacher at one point. In 1964, they got a divorce. The next year, in February 1965, Manoff had a heart attack and died. He was only 50 years old. She had always thought that the stress of being on the blacklist killed him. She started going to therapy in 1961. She was having a breakdown. Her 3 weekly lessons cost $45 each, which is almost half of her income. She paid $3,000 over 18 months. But she understood why she always said yes to strong men. Her folks came to the U.S. by boat. Her dad wasn't there for her emotionally. She had always wanted to be liked. Dealing with her pain and separating the past from the present were helped by therapy. It also made her want to make films about mental health in the future. At her worst, she never stopped acting. She did stage work from 1951 to 1964. Actors Equity protected actors who were on a blacklist. She did work for $55 a week on shows like A Hole in the Head, Wedding Breakfast, and Arms and the Man. She did shows at least 6 nights a week. Her performance in The Maids won her an Obie Award in 1965. She also learned how to direct at the Actors Studio, where she worked. Her friends from the theater helped each other stay alive. Everyone knew they were fighting the same thing. Her income dropped from $75,000 before the blacklist to about $4,000 by 1962. To avoid being kicked out, she traveled to Europe and got small TV parts in the UK and Italy for $500 to $800 per episode. She worked behind people's backs by using fake names. She even had a facelift in 1963 to try to get parts by making her look younger. The whole thing made her feel like a stranger in her own field and in the country that had once welcomed her. Her exile ended for good in 1964. A person with ties to the House Un-American Activities Committee asked her lawyer to do them a favor. So much for her being innocent. She was cast as Stella Cernick in 71 episodes of Peyton Place in 1965. Giving her that part finally let her release everything she had been holding back. It got her an Emmy in 1966. The only actor in the whole group who won was her. "You deserve it, kid," Frank Sinatra told her. She finally felt safe in Hollywood again. They were both in the 1967 movie, In the Heat of the Night. She felt sad in her part as Mrs. Colbert because she had just lost Manoff to a heart attack. Poitier used her real sadness when she told her that her husband was dead in the screenplay. Honestly, she cried. The director and editor didn't do anything with the film. A powerful scene in the movie happened in that one. There was no playing. It was her release of pain. In late that same year, she played Miriam Poehler, a tough cop in the drug-filled world of Hollywood, in Valley of the Dolls. She used her real life to show how cruel and hopeless the business could be. Even though reviewers didn't like the movie, it did very well at the box office. It seemed real to her because she had been through the same darkness. He was a director, and she married him in 1962. People in his field didn't trust him at first either. Folks thought he might agree with Manoff's views, but he helped her get back on her feet. Baby Belinda was their baby. The fact that they stayed married gave her security she had never had before. By 1969, she had been nominated for another Oscar for The Landlord. Even though she is a liberal, she played a racist mother from Long Island, which was shocking. Some critics were shocked that she decided to say such hateful things on TV, but she said that the character was based on people in her own family, which showed how racism could be hidden. It was clear that she wasn't afraid to take on difficult jobs, even if they made other people feel bad. Her last Oscar was for Shampoo on March 29, 1976. 40 years old. It was shocking what she said, saying, "I must have really wanted this. Why else would I wear an old wedding dress?" She deceived people for years about her age. When she returned to Hollywood in 1964, the mayor helped her change the year on her license that showed her birth. Her part in Shampoo was only 18 minutes long, making it one of the smallest Oscar wins ever. However, it was very important. According to her, she felt like she had no enemies for the first time. She was also nominated that same year for Voyage of the Damned, where she played a Jewish survivor. For her, the story was close to home. It was her family's experience that the Holocaust made them afraid. Despite only being in 8% of the movie, her performance was strong enough to get her another Oscar nomination. Her performance in The Neon Ceiling earned her another Emmy in 1972. That movie changed everything. She started to give her opinion on the story and direction. On set, it was tense, but it showed she was ready for more. It was her second Emmy win, and it made her really think about becoming a director. Although she was 52 years old by 1977, she still pretended to be younger. She got the part in Airport 77 as the mean, wealthy woman who made fun of everyone. The way older actresses were cast as angry, forgotten women showed in her part. Some reviewers said that the scene where her character got punched was a very offensive and sexist one. After a certain age, it showed how tough the business could be for women. Also in 1979, she was up for The Swarm, but the movie didn't do well. After spending $21 million, it only made $10 million. Some people said it was one of the worst movies ever. At 53, Grant was afraid that this failure would end her career once more. Therefore, she changed. She went behind the camera and began to direct. She now has a second life in Hollywood because of that choice. No more waiting for permission. She planned to go her own way. Hollywood had a surprise event in 1980 that no one saw coming. Suddenly, a woman appeared behind the camera and changed everything. This person was named Lee Grant. At age 55, when most actors were losing their jobs, she did something brave. The movie Tell Me a Riddle was her first full-length movie. Not just the story or the acting made it significant. It was that the movie was written, produced, and directed by women altogether. Things like that had never happened in the US before. Two Oscar-winning actors, Melvin Douglas and Lila Kudrova, played lead roles in the movie, which was based on a quiet, moving story about an elderly Jewish couple. Surprisingly, Lee Grant raised more than $1 million to make it happen. With that much money, projects run by women almost never got funded back then. Also, the movie wasn't buried when it was over. Filmways Pictures bought it, and it was even shown at the Cannes Film Festival during Directors' Fortnight. Award winners at the Edinburgh Film Festival included Best Picture and Best Actor. For many, this was the first time they saw a woman in a leading role in a big movie and thought it was great. 6 years after that, Lee Grant broke through another wall. Directors Guild of America Award in 1986 for a CBS movie called Nobody's Child. Marie Balter, a woman who spent 20 years locked up in mental hospitals, was the inspiration for the story. The lead was played by Marlo Thomas, who got an Emmy for her work. When it came to how America treated people with mental illness, the movie was raw, emotional, and completely honest. Grant's win made news because no woman had ever won in that area in the Guild's 51-year history. When it happened, she was 59 years old. Her gender didn't make her win. In a field that often forgets both young women and older women, she won. Despite that, none of this was simple. She won an Oscar for Shampoo in 1975. Most folks would say that's the top of their job. For Lee Grant, though, it seemed like the end of the road. There were 48 of her, and Hollywood already thought she was too old for important parts. With her Oscar in her hands that night, she knew she was slowly being erased. The Hollywood blacklist took away 12 years of her youth, from age 24 to 36. Now it was time to strike again. In order to get 5 years taken off her license, she had to lie about her age and even have dinner with the mayor of Los Angeles. It wasn't about having fun. To stay alive, she began again. The American Film Institute put her in the Women's Directors Workshop, and her first short film was based on a play in which one woman talks and the other stays quiet. Instead of acting, she made her way back as a director. In 1983, she was in charge of HBO's When Women Kill. People had never seen anything like it on TV before. Real women in jail talked to her, like Leslie Van Houten from the Manson family. Stories that were forgotten were shown by her. Only 12 of the more than 1,100 people on death row were women. She told them that many of them had been abused for years before they finally broke. People didn't think the movie tried to excuse their crimes, but it did show them as people. In 1985, she did something even more dangerous. What Sex Am I? Was directed by her. About transgender people in a program. During Reagan's presidency, just saying the word transgender on TV could get you harassed. It was still done by Lee Grant. Filming real people trying to live their truth took her all over the country, from California to Texas to New York. This review said that her movie seemed like it belonged in the 2000s, not the 1980s. One person said it was extremely honest. Lee Grant opened the door 5 years before Paris burned down. There was another HBO movie she made in 1986 called Down and Out in America. This one talked about poverty during Reagan's time in office. She showed farmers in Minnesota how they lose hundreds of farms every week. Over 3,000 plant workers at a time were being sent overseas to work. There were even death threats against her. But the Academy knew about it. That movie was in the running for Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars. For HBO, it was their first Oscar win. With that, she became the only actor to win an Oscar for directing a documentary as well. At this point, no one else has done that either. Her work on TV was just as strong. In 1966 for Peyton Place and 1971 for The Neon Ceiling, she got an Emmy. Within that second one, a mother from the suburbs quits her job and her life. Television didn't generally show that kind of story. In the 1980s and 1990s, she kept getting Emmy nominations, sometimes for her directing work. She wasn't just making awesome TV. She showed how TV could be. She made the 1989 documentary Battered, which was about violence in the home. She talked to abuse victims and attackers. She wasn't vague about anything. People in Congress, in schools, and during trainings all watched the movie. It showed she was a great director, according to People magazine. In 1990, the New York City Council and LA County both recognized her work and thanked her formally. Moreover, Women in Film gave her their first Lifetime Achievement Award in 1989. Her most shocking event, though, happened in 2023. She lightly said in an interview that she was 97 and a half years old and was born in 1925. People had believed her for decades that she was younger. The information on Wikipedia and IMDb was totally wrong. The reporter didn't even respond enough. She had to tell them to be shocked again. In fact, she began lying about her age after she got off the blacklist in 1964. Actually, she was 39, but she said she was in her early 30s. Agents, casting directors, and even her friends knew she was lying. She told people around her once that she had to teach them how to keep the lie going. It wasn't about looking good. Finding work was the point. Women over 50 get 78% fewer roles than guys their age, according to later studies. Her 2014 book, I Said Yes to Everything, was a memoir that told the whole story of how she got through the band years, from 1952 to 1964. She didn't want to go before the House Un-American Activities Committee and speak against her husband, so she was not allowed to do it anymore. There were no movie parts or TV roles. She had a job in the theater, hired teachers, and wrote stories for them using fake names. It was so traumatic for her that she couldn't remember names afterward. It seemed like her brain shut things out to stay alive. Although she didn't stop, she said it was like dancing on the head of a pin to stay alive at that time. She is 99 years old now, in 2025, and she is still smart and busy. For her 100th birthday on October 31st, Turner Classic Movies is already planning a big party. In 1951, she made her Broadway debut. In 1974, that happened. Even now, she still posts on social media with her trademark gray hair and red lipstick, and she is still the oldest live director in Hollywood.